What is up, J-pop fans? Now, so for the last video, I promised that I'd do a vocal tutorial and vocal mixing if I got 1,000 views, and I did. Actually did get more than that. And so I'm gonna deliver on that promise. Oh, and by the way, I'm using a VTuber model since I don't have much time to make these videos anymore. But anyway, let's start the video. Now, let's talk first about microphones. Now, so this video is gonna be divided into two halves. The first half being how to mix a good mic, a decent mic that sounds great out of the bat, and then a terrible mic that needs lots of optimization, lots of EQing and effects, just to make it kind of sound good. So for this part, it's gonna be the good mic, and I'm gonna be explaining how to optimize the bad mic after this video. So as you can see with the amount of effects I have, this is gonna be the good mic part, and then I'm just gonna explain the bad mic later. So let's start with recording. Now, what mic did I use? So I used the Audio-Technica 80-2020. So there are a bit more better alternatives than the 80-2020, but if you're starting out, it's a really good mic just for simple vocal recording. So other than mic and your room treatment, I think it all comes down to your performance and how good the take was. But I guess that wouldn't be a problem for a lot of you. Now, let's start with the actual mixing. So the first effect on our chain will be our tuning plugin. So you can choose from Autotune Pro or Melodyne or something free like Brillion or M Tuner, as long as it tunes to the way you want it, and then just sing the best you can and just stay on pitch as much as possible. Although I can just not put Autotune on, I do like the sound of when my vocals are completely in the grid, and so that's why I place it on here. So for my settings, I put it into a speed that's not too fast, so it tunes just naturally, and of course we're in B flat. So after our tuning plugin, we're gonna add our high pass filter. So this is just to clean up the muddy frequencies, since I was using a condenser mic, and so there are lots of frequencies that are under 100 Hz that I really don't want, and it's gonna affect the compression later as well. So after I have this on, I put a de-esser, which basically just takes any S sounds, the frequency it's in, and basically duck or remove or like take away the volume whenever it's detected that this frequency is really high. So it helps just to smoothen your vocals out. So after de-essing, we're gonna add in our EQ, which is gonna be really hard to explain since we don't have the same mic, voice, key or register, and not in the same style. So I'll just give you some few tips to deal with when it comes to looking for what kind of sounds to sort of remove or add. So we're gonna have a listen through to the vocals without any of the EQing. We're just gonna leave the de-esser and the high pass filter on.
孤独を感じるのが好きになった静かな世界に住んでいたい
So that's basically the vocals on its own without the EQ. Now, what we're gonna do first is we're gonna reapply our high pass filter just less steep, so that all it's doing is just taking away some frequencies that we don't really need under this range here above 100. But what's gonna be different is what kinds of things we're gonna do to the mids, especially when it comes to the gender of the vocals. Since I am a male, we're gonna have to cut some of the boomy frequencies over here at 230, somewhere like that. But the thing is, I'm singing a high register, so I'm not gonna take off too many low frequencies since there aren't really any. So I'm just gonna basically turn off all the bands, and we're gonna have a comparison of what having this dip and having without this dip would sound like.
孤独を感じるのが好きになった静かな世界
So if you're on good speakers or you have good headphones on, you might hear that having this dip on 200 Hz kind of eliminates some ringing frequency on the low end that gets more clear as I put the dip in. So now we're gonna be dealing with the mid-range. Now, to compare the effect of the EQ, we're gonna compare what's the sound of adding and what's the sound of decreasing mid-range. So this is without the mid-range.
孤独を感 感じるのが好きになった
This one is when we decrease the mid-range.
孤独を感じるのが好きになった静かな世界に住んでいたい
So what I did was just basically have you listen through what decreasing the mid-range would sound like, and then the differences of having this combined with this together, and how it's gonna be much more clear if we add these decreations to the vocal. So now I'm gonna boost the frequency, so now you can notice what those frequencies were that we were decreasing, so you can understand the context of the EQing.
孤独を感じるのが好きになった静かな世界に住んでいたい
You'll know that you'll just have to decrease this part of the EQ so that you can fix it. Now for the high end, it's gonna depend on your mic. So all I did were decreations and cuts since my mic is sort of on the high end, and so some of it I had to remove. So as you can see here, I added some shelving to the high frequency since I just wanted a little bit of taming but not too much. That'll take out the crispiness. But I did do a dip on this frequency since this typically contains the part where your voice gets nasally. As you can hear, I'm gonna have you compare the two.
孤独を感じるのが好きになった静かな世界に住んでいたい花に見えたことがかけたい
So band 7 is just my preference since I didn't want this frequency from my mic, so I just removed it. I'll still have you compare these two.
孤独を感じるのが好きになった静かな世界に住んでいたい
So after EQing is adding our compression in. But what is compression? Basically, it's when we have a sound and we have a certain limit, and when it passes through the limit, the volume gets decreased by a certain ratio which we can control here, and which we can control the speed of the start of this decrease, and we can also change the speed of when it lets go of that volume decretion. So now I'm gonna play that track right now, but I'm gonna leave it muted so we only have the level meter on, and I'm gonna tell you how to analyze the graphs and the volume meters. So lots of compressors have this interface. Basically it displays a waveform, and the line here on pink is basically your vocal decretion, so how much a vocal is taken away when this is playing. So as you can see, it dips when there's a sound, and basically as you can notice, most of our waveforms hit a certain trend of loudness, which is the point of a compressor. We're gonna stop certain sounds from getting too loud. And so as you can see, the threshold, it's sitting at a point where the level is quite stable here, and I put it in a ratio that's not too high. When dealing with vocals, typically you'd have your release very slow and then your attack just an okay amount of fast. So what I usually do with compression is, once the sound is taken away, I just gain it up so that it stays like that. As you can see, the volume meter here is quite stable. It's not as bouncy as without compression. Now I'm gonna show you the differences of the volume with and without compression.
何しても君のことを思い出すこの曲を遠ざける美しくない
So the last part is gonna be talking about reverb and delay. Oh wait, no, I don't really use delay, just reverb. So when it comes to using reverb, some people would just slap on a plugin like Valhalla or something, but if you're gonna do it the right way, I guess the right way, you can add a soundtrack and put reverb on it. And the reason why a soundtrack is gonna be better than just slapping a plugin on is because we can control what the reverb sounds like. So for example, in my reverb chain, the one that the vocals are going through, I have a high pass filter to clean up the mids of the low from the reverb, and I have an imager plugin just to widen the reverb so it doesn't share the same mono space as the mono vocals. I have a compressor which is actually sidechained to the vocals. I'm gonna talk about this later on. And just gain. So to add a send track in Ableton, just click insert return track after right clicking a track basically. It's called return here, but in some DAWs it's called send or aux. So the controls for the reverb send is basically here. So this is the first send track and then this is the second. And basically you're just gonna send a bit of audio to your reverb send. And what you're gonna do with the reverb plugin actually is you set it to 100% and just set your favorite settings here, but just keep 100% in. After that, you can just dial in your amount of reverb that you want, like this.
何しても君のことを思い出すこの曲を遠ざける
So to show you the advantage of using a reverb send, I'm gonna turn all of these off and just leave the reverb on. I'm gonna play the entire mix without the effects to the reverb.
何しても君のことを思い出すこの曲を遠ざける美しくない純粋でもいい
So I know it's a small detail, but I love keeping the reverb just clean so that it doesn't affect the entire mix of the song. So the other advantage of using a reverb send is we can do the technique called sidechaining your reverb. Now what's cool about this is it allows your vocal to be clean because the reverb's gonna only work when your vocal isn't playing. So this is a very common vocal mixing technique, and basically the premise is we have a compressor and we basically sidechain it to the vocals. So to demonstrate this, we're gonna compare with and without the compression technique.
何しても君のことを思い出す何しても君のことを思い出すこの曲を遠ざける美しい
So you can adjust your settings if you want more subtle compression or much more obvious like this.
何しても君のこと
So it's up to you and what mix you're dealing with. But basically that's all the things that I did for this vocal with a good mic. And so we're gonna transfer to Pro Tools. I'm gonna show you a separate project wherein we're dealing with a very terrible mic and I'm doing my best to sort of fix what I have. So enter fancy transition here. Okay, so we're on the Pro Tools project and this is the one with the bad mic. And so I'm just gonna have you listen through the vocals without any processing to see what it sounds like.
呼吸の一つが喉に絡んだ気泡吐き出した数秒やっと足がついた柔らかな泥の感触がした逃げようこんな自分ならいらない僕には何もいらない他にも名声も愛も称賛も何もいらないこのまま遠くに行きたい
So I guess on its own it's a pretty okay take. But for me there are a few things about the frequencies that I really want to fix. And so that's the first thing I did after autotune. It's basically just fixing a lot of frequencies. And so we did lots of changes for this part here on the high frequencies and the nasally frequencies. Since for some reason I guess the mic just picked up more of the nasal frequencies. And we're gonna have a... So right now I'm gonna show you the vocal and I'm just gonna slowly turn on the bands as we're gonna go through it.
こんな自分ならいらない僕には何もいらない他にも名声も愛も称賛も何もいらないこのまま遠くに行きたい思い出の外に去りたいまた君の歌が聞きたい
So after the EQing we did, I just added some compression and added some volume and then added just a few adjustments to the final EQ. and added our vocal reverb in, and so it sounds like this now.
こんな自分ならいらない。僕には何にもいらない。他にも名声も愛も賞賛も何にもいらない。このまま遠くに行きたい。思い出の外に去り。
So in context with everything, the bad mic with the EQing sounds like this.
こんな自分ならいらない。僕には何にもいらない。他にも名声も愛も賞賛も何にもいらない。このまま遠くに行きたい。思い出の外に去りたい。また君の歌が聞きたい。
And that's basically it. Although you might have learned nothing from this video since it's just me showing how I do things and not an actual mixing tutorial, I hope I did give you inspiration to try making vocals even though you don't have the best mic in the world. If you do have the budget, you can go on and buy the good mic if you want. It's gonna be a good decision since if you're gonna be dealing with acoustic guitars and vocals, it's gonna be sounding great and you don't have to EQ or compress as much or as hard as you would do on a mic that's quite cheap. But if you did come from the last video, thank you, just thank you. I wasn't expecting people to even view that, like, since it was quite long, and then I'm sure you guys haven't even made it through the end. But still, thank you for viewing it, and it means a lot to me. And I'm gonna be making more soon. I promise.